Good evening. This is your host, Apostle Bennett, your brother. You are my family, and we are about to take flight on another venture in hopes that we will gather some understanding and come into a deeper understanding of who we are, what we are, and why we are. Our subject on this evening is an interesting one. It's one that we hope you would gather a greater appreciation and come into a deeper understanding on how and what God wants to do in you. Now, I'm going to deal with some situations. I'm going to bring out some examples. I'm going to utilize the principles that we've told you about that we typically use. And those principles have to do with all truths are parallel. Now, the reason this is so vitally important is because it helps us to understand what God is saying to us in His Word on a level that we can comprehend it because we're able to compare and contrast principles that are parallel to the principles that He has embedded in His Word that we utilize every day. It doesn't require brain surgery or rocket science in order to grasp the concepts of God. Sometimes I think that we as ministers, we complicate things. I think this is why Jesus used the method that he used when he was teaching common everyday people just like ourselves, teaching them in a parabolic way, giving them some spiritual concepts, some spiritual principles, but they were tucked into natural occurrences. It's kind of like what our mothers did to us when we were infants, when we didn't want to eat the squash, or we didn't want to eat some undesirable vegetable. She tainted it with something that was sweet, something that would shape and alter our palate, something that would be soothing, something that we would desire, something that we had interest in, so that we would be able to ingest it. So both missions would be accomplished. The infant would be fed, and the mother would have accomplished her objective in providing the necessary nourishment that the infant needed, even though at the time the infant didn't realize that he or she needed it. We're oftentimes driven by certain type of compulsions, and these compulsions have become habitual. They become habits of ours. Sometimes they become the very thing that ensnares us. So what we want to do is we want to take it and to transform the things that have ensnared us in the past to the things that's going to give us a platform for victory and success. So we're going to utilize example. I think you will understand it. I think you will be enlightened by it. And it is my hopes and my prayers that you would be so inspired that you would go and you will share it with someone else, that you would tell them that they have to. It is imperative. It is a must that they come and visit the telecast so that they can too gather some special insight, some nuggets that they can take with them and utilize in their everyday life, something that will empower them, give them the tools to become what God has created them by design. I'll say it again. He created us by design. It is not a mistake. So I was coming from the doctor on this evening, and I do apologize that I'm doing this live showing so late in the evening. It was not my intent, but I had a doctor's appointment in another city several miles away, and it was in the late evening. As a result of that, I had to come back through traffic, and needless to say, it was a challenge. But we're here. We want to stick to what we have stated and to come to you with something fresh, something new, something that will spark your interest, something that will set you back on your heels. I've been listening to you. All comments are accepted. I need your help. I can't stress that enough. I need your help. I'm still relatively new in this venture. I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm loving the responses that I'm getting back. I'm loving your comments. So like us and then share with someone else and let them know so that their lives too can be empowered. What we want to do is we want to read from a particular passage, and that passage is found in Luke chapter number 14, verse number 28. And I'm going to read it into your hearing. So I want you to take some time wherever you are. If you're driving, keep your hands on the wheel. Just kind of relax and sit back and enjoy the ride. If you're at home and you're in the comfort of your family room, whatever room in your home you're in, and you're listening to us or you're viewing us, we want you to just to relax and kick back, put your feet up, and get ready for the ride. So we're going to be reading again from Luke chapter number 14, and we're going to start at verse number 28. And it reads something like this. It says, "For which of you intending to build a tower sitteth not down first and count the cost to see whether you have the sufficiency to finish it?" Now, there are some jump out words that just jump out immediately. And those words I'm going to go through with you. The first one that tends to jump out is intending. Intent, something that you have pondered over, you've meditated over. You sit down and you've etched out some idea, something that you have developed, something that you were inspired to do. And now you've made a determination that it can no longer just dwell in the realm of just thought. Now you need to sit down and write it out, devise a plan, get a strategy, put some other constructive networking processes in place so that it will assist you and reinforce you and help you bear the load, the weight of what you are about to venture off into. Now, some of you have some brilliant ideas. The Bible tells us that God will give us witty inventions. This means that God is equally, if not more so, invested in you and what you are designed to do. So you are created and designed with purpose and for purpose. God has a plan. Failure is not in that plan, but you are in that plan because God has not planned failure for you. Now, you need to say that as often as you can think of it, because it will then root in your consciousness. And if you ponder over it and you mutter it, and if you take it and you meditate on it, then it will sink into your subconscious mind. And as you're going throughout the day, you will be able to say when you are faced with conflict that God has a plan for me. Failure is not in that plan, but I am in that plan because God has not planned failure for me. Now, I say that often to myself. I spend time talking and inspiring and encouraging myself. I would like others to render some kind of acknowledgement, but I can't hang my hat on that. I have to be self assured that I am going to succeed despite the opposition. And the only way to ensure that is for me to take a position that God has established for me. And that position is with Him, I cannot fail. With Him, there is no shortcomings. With Him, I am enabled to do the impossible. So, possibility thinking reaches an all time high because it elevates to a level where it becomes impossibility thinking. In other words, my impossibility is God's possibility. And all He needs from me is a little inspiration, a little encouragement, a little excitement, a little expression to establish that He and I are aligned with one another. See, I must ascend upward towards God. That's what Paul was saying when he told the brethren that were in the Roman church to be ye transformed by the renewing of our minds, so that we'll be able to prove what is good, what is acceptable, what is the perfect will of God. So we must ascend. That's why he tells us, be not conformed, but be ye transformed. So what I want you to do on this evening is to think in terms of transformative thinking, where you're going to leave where you typically would be, and you're going to elevate. You're going to take flight and you're going to change your attitude so your aptitude will push you higher in attitude. Does that make sense? You're going to go higher in altitude because your attitude has changed. Your outlook on yourself has changed because you have the building blocks to make you the best you can possibly be. You have now transcended those other mediocrity, those other normalities. You are now in a different position, a different place, a different time. This is your time. There's no better place than where you are. You start right now where you are, and you put your shoulder to the wheel and you begin to push and push with intent, meaning that I have a plan. I have a plan. But like most things, people typically don't write their plan down. I want to submit to you that a map that is not written down is not easily followed. Neither is a plan. You have to take your thoughts and you have to put them in writing so that you will have an idea of what the vision is. You will have something tangible in hand so that you can revise it, so you can restructure it, so you can reinforce it, so you can add to it all of the reinforcement that is necessary to secure success. That's right, you have to secure success. So we want to take a look at another jump out word. After he established what he intended to build, which was a house or a tower, the Bible says, don't you sit down first and count how much it's going to cost That means that you're taking everything into consideration. In a natural construction of a house, you have all type of considerations. So it's mandatory that you sit down so that you can establish what those costs are. When I was in undergrad, I was studying to be an engineer. My aspiration was to be an architectural engineer. But the university I went to didn't have an architecture program, but one of their sister schools did. So it was my intent to finish my first 3 years at the university and then afterwards transfer to the sister university, who had that as one of its main courses. So as I was studying my engineering classes, they began to teach us in general all aspects of engineering. Well, because my desire was architectural engineering, I recall us studying one of the engineering books, and it was talking about processes, the process that you must go through. And within each process, there is another process. So this is why it's necessary to write the plan down. If you've ever seen a schematic or architectural rendering, you will see that it has elevations, it has the actual building, it has mechanical, electrical, it has all type of engineering that's there. And those engineerings is for the safety of not only the builder, but those who would be in the surrounding environment. Because the last thing you want to do is construct something that's dilapidated or have something that is about to fall down because it doesn't have structural integrity. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. Remember, I told you in the start that we were going to deal with the issue that all truths are parallel. Now, we can parallel this construct, though it be natural, we can compare it with the construct of our own lives. Can you see the parallel? I am spirit, I have a soul, and I live in a body. It is the same as living in a house. The house is not me, though the house is mine. I have ownership of the house. I have guardianship of the house. I have administrative authority, supervisory authority. Anyone coming to the house, I'm the host in the house, speaking of it naturally. Now, using that same principle, when you walk up to my door and ring my doorbell or knock on my door, I'm the one that more than likely will greet you. And whether or not you enter into any of the rooms that are in the house is dependent upon me. The same is true with you as a spiritual building. When individuals come to your house, they see your exterior, the outer part. Now, the outer part has minimal beauty. Now, I know that people think that they're fine, gorgeous, debonair, beautiful, handsome, whatever adjective you might use to describe yourself. The Bible says that when we walk away from the mirrors, that we forget what kind of person we really are. And if you scientifically was to take a look at your skin, even under a microscope, we're told that you will see all type of parasitic activity going on the surface of your skin, and many of these life forms are there for the preservation of the body. So when people try to start speaking high of themselves, then I typically will remind them, you're just a walking bundle of parasitical life form. Is that so? That typically knocks the edge off to let people know that your beauty is only beholden to you and those who you have encouraged to believe the same ideology that you do. But the reality is that it is temporary. It will be marred and scarred over life. It will be roughed up. Just like our natural houses, there will be some fading. Our younger beauty and integrity is greater in the early stages than it is in the latter stages, because time in and of itself does beat up on our natural homes as well as our human homes. So we are spirit. We live in this body. This body houses us. People get to know us when they come in contact, when they visit our home, our human home, just like when they come to visit our natural home. So we want to kind of get that idea, that concept. We want it to resonate in your mind. We want it to settle so that you'll be able to see it. And as you go forward, just like the time that you invest in beautifying, in shoring up, and reinforcing, and sometimes tearing up and replacing even parts of the foundation, so that it will be able to withstand, so that its stay is more permanent. So we want to encourage you. You're doing the same thing with your human house. So we gave you the example. Remember the principle. All truths are parallel. So that principle is there. Now, we want to move a little bit ahead because we don't want to be a very long time. We had pretty much set aside 45 minutes of just talking and sharing around the word and concepts for victorious living. Is that, and we wanted to utilize the last 15 minutes for questions and answers. If you like that and you would like that to be a permanent part of our telecast, our podcast, then comment. Again, let us know what your thoughts are. We solicit them. Now, going back to this idea of the structure. Now, in any structure, when you're building, you have to do an excavation. You have to check the soil content. So where you plant your building, your home, even if you've moved from one geographic area to another, and you moved your home to this now new place, you have to clear the ground out. You have to anchor in the foundation. Most times they want you to do what they call an ecological study. And that's to get soil content, to see what's under the surface of the soil, to make sure it's not shifty, that where you're going to put your foundation, there won't be much slippage. And if you're close to different areas where there's a lot of movement, then you can stabilize it. Engineering is important because then they will tell you what kind of reinforcement has to be in the foundation, what depth has to be depending on the structure of your house, the size of your house, the height of your house, the load of your house. Then after they go through these different stages. All of this is based on a plan. You share that plan with the county or the city planners. They review it to see if there's soundness there. If there's soundness, they will sign it off. They will stamp it. And once they give the approval, the work begins. Doesn't that sound logical? If we do that for our natural buildings, then why don't we do that for our human buildings? The building that is me, that houses the community of self. If we have that much sense and that much knowledge that we're able to construct large towers, never seen in the history of the world, whose imagination is the only limitation. We've seen structures that are so phenomenal. What this does is tells you your capacity, your capability, what you have the possibility to do, even though years ago it would have seemed impossible. Can you see the transitioning where time has moved ahead? All that is needed is that you spend some time sitting down, coming up with the idea, imagining the impossible, imagining reaching beyond wherever you have before, reaching beyond where your mom, your dad, your grandparents have ever dreamed would be possible. This is your time. You can do this, but you have to have a plan. You have to gather the minds, people that have your best interest at heart. And you have to then construct it with the material that has been approved by the plan. The Bible is that plan. It gives you prudent and sound advice on how to build. It tells you how to succeed. It tells you how to overcome the opposition, the resistance. It tells you how to bear the load. Yes, my brother. Yes, my sister. It gives you all of that. Now I know we've made it something more. We made it super fantastic. We made it almost unachievable. But that's not why you have it. You have it because it is achievable. You have it because God intended you to have this bit of information to establish you and to validate you, to secure your existence. And not only existence, but give you the ability to live. He said that he came that you might have life, and that in abundance. Brothers and sisters, if you don't have abundance and you don't have the imagination to grasp it, to seize it, then you're living beneath your privilege. You may not be there right now, but your today does not reflect what your tomorrow is going to be. Did you hear what I said? I said what it's going to be. It's going to be that because for the first or second time in your life that you've reached this crossroad and you're so tired of being tired and waiting for someone to come and help you. You're so tired that you made a decision. I can no longer wait. Kind of like the man at the pool of Bethesda, waited there for 38 years. And when Jesus had a dialogue with him, he says, I've been waiting here for 38 years, and I've been waiting for someone to help me to get in so I can seize what I believe, what I've imagined to be mine. And Jesus told him, hey, you don't have to wait any longer. All you got to do is get up and do your thing. Well, I want to say that to you using that same principle. You've been waiting and waiting and waiting for someone to come from anywhere to help you, and they've not come. Aren't you tired of waiting? Dust yourself off, shake yourself, and tell yourself, come in line, get in order. God has equipped you with everything that you need. And the things that you don't have, He has promised to provide for you. He is your source and He has many resources. So don't look for the resource, look to the source. Let Him resolve all the issues pertaining to resources. Now, in building this and constructing this, He said you had to sit down first. See, some of us get an idea and we jump up and we just run. We don't have the first bit of information on how we're going to accomplish it. We've not sat long enough to think the whole thing through. This habit has to be broken because what that habit is gendered from is a spirit of immediacy. Something that you just gotta have. You gotta have it right now. Can't wait any longer. Gotta get it, gotta get it, gotta go. No, stop, sit down, stop, sit down, gather yourself, summons the best that you know around you. Let God send others that will casually bump into you. You may be sitting somewhere on a bus stop, sitting at your job, at lunch, sitting at the cafe, Starbucks, at some coffee house, some restaurant, wherever you may be. God will have somebody that'll be talking and you just happen to be in the vicinity. And you will gather that information and it will make a difference in your life. Remember, God is totally total in His totality, perfectly perfect in His perfection. And guess what? He has deposited a portion of that in you. Can you see it? Do you believe it? Oh, you know, Apostle, I really want to believe it. Then why won't you? Well, you know, I've had so much hard time. Stop belly aching. Stop making excuses. Excuses are like pores. Everyone has thousands of them. What separates you from everybody else? To this point, you've been just a part of the go along. Well, I don't know what to do because you didn't sit down. Sit down. It's okay. Take a load off. Watch what happens when you give yourself time to breathe and meditate and find quiet. Watch how God blesses you. God doesn't need the wealth. He doesn't need all of this materialism. He did all of this for you and for me. And it's His joy to see us move from where we were, poverty to prosperity, ignorance to intelligence. Can't you see it? But you got to sit down long enough to get it. He says, and when you sit down, I want you to go to work. He said, I want you to start counting the costs because there's a cost analysis. How much is it going to take? Every part is important. It's sufficient. It has its role. and there's a cost attached to it. Sometimes we overstepped and become overwhelmed because we didn't prepare. And this is one of the most vital elements in this whole construct, establishing what you are able to do. Now, all God requires from you is to do your best. Many years when I was in college, I got overwhelmed because I was taking 18 and 21 units a semester. And things, I was trying to get to church and my car had broke down and I was catching a bus, and it was 3 to 3.5 hours to get there and 3 to 3.5 hours to get all the way back to Watts on the bus. And I was exhausted. And I remember Carl McAuley saying to me, do the very best you can. Commit the rest into the hands of God. I want to share that with you. Deposit that in your spirit. Tuck that in your spirit, because that has carried me a long way. It's carried me up over hills and mountains. It's carried me down in valleys below. It's carried me 40 plus years being linked in ministry as an overcomer. And I want to share that with you. But there was a cost attached to it. There was a cost going to school, making the investment. Yes, I could have gone out and partied and had a fantastic time, continued women chasing and all that other stuff that I was ignorantly involved in. But I never would have accomplished and never had the fulfillment that I have from that day to this day. Never would have met, never would have gone and visited places that you only read about in books. But someone said some of the same things that I'm saying now to you. Sit down, write out your plan. Write your plan. Plan your work and work your plan. Sit down. Do a cost analysis. Do you have enough to finish it? Now you might say, well, no, I don't. That's all right. That's the whole point of the analysis. Because you may not be able to do everything today. And there's very few things on this planet that can be done in a day if they're monumental in nature. In fact, I don't know of any. So what I'm saying to you is maybe you just have enough to finish part A. And once that is finished and it is thoroughly prepped for part B, then God will provide the resource because He is your source. Can you comprehend that? And I'm not by any stretch of the imagination trying to belittle you at all. I would not waste my time nor your time. I'm trying to help. Listen. Listen. It is extremely important that you get it right this time. You don't have a lot of time. Time is of the essence. The Bible tells us to redeem, to try to regather as much of it as we can so that we can accomplish the task while it's daytime. It's daytime, brothers and sisters. It's daytime, family. But we've got to start considering the cost because of what we're constructing. Now, getting back to you now, we're going to go strong. We're going to go hard with the construction of you because I think you've grasped the concept. I think you understand fully that all truths are parallel, at least in this set of circumstances, with the comparison to a natural house and your human house, the house that is you, the house that people come and they knock on every day, the house that you speak from, That house, the house that you spent time beautifying the outside. So people that observe you from a distance, they look and they say, wow, that house is nicely painted. That house has beautiful contrasting colors. It has beautiful blinds. It has great curb appeal. That's the same thing we say about natural houses. When people say, wow, she's beautiful, wow, he's handsome, because he's been in the gym working out. His hair is always in place. His clothes are always properly fitted. From a distance, she has great curb appeal. But then when you open the door, you look and they're hoarders. They got junk everywhere, in every room, multiple things all over, complete disarray. Does that sound familiar? They even have a program out now called The Hoarders. People that habitually, they just don't have any sense of order. And everything is everywhere. So the things that were designed for that living quarters can never be achieved because there's so much junk and filth. Compaction is so much. And it is so extraordinary that when people come in, they're instantly moved in one way or another. And the people that inhabit it typically don't know how to change. And if they don't get the help that they need, they will continue down that road and ultimately die that way. So what are we saying? What are you hoarding? Your external looks great. You got great curb appeal, but you're confused. But you're depressed. But you are a people pleaser. How about lonely? All of these things, these vices, alcohol, drug abuse, codependent behaviors, pursuit for status sake, depressed out of your mind, pride, jealousy, envy, the list goes on, self-pity, gossip, criticism. I mean, the whole gamut. We can go on and on. People pleasers, over and underachievers, workaholics, having to need endorsement or recognition, conformity, sexualized behavior, abnormal, aggressive, violent, rigidity, legalism, judgmentalism, obsessive, compulsive behavior patterns. I mean, come on, folks. Come on, family. Any of the things that I said, do they touch somewhere in your life? See, because these are the pillars that you constructed your house on. Because these are the things that you believe somebody told you, someone convinced you that these things are going to bring you happiness, and they don't. And when you finally achieve these things and you reach these sub levels, You establish that the sense of gratification that you sought is not there. What you thought would be is not. And you have that empty feeling, and you become frustrated and depressed. And when you try to say and speak to others, then they tell you other ideas and principles that even cause you to sink further into a state of despair. It's time to shake yourself. It's time to say, I'm done with that. It's time to say, I'm better than that. It's time to say, no, God created me for something more, and I must do more. I owe it to God, and I owe it to myself. Everyone else, get in line. I owe God, and I owe me. Everyone else, get in line. That's the attitude that you have to have so that you can accomplish what your goals and objectives are. Now, I'm just going to kind of leave you with this. In any construction, you have to have strain and stress loads. You have to have beams in place whose primary purpose is to establish integrity in the construction of the building. The load of the house is beneath these beams and these structures. These beams have a specific use. Most times when you are looking at these beams that bear weight, that keep the roof from collapsing, the foundation that has settled and cured, that supports those structures, they have what's called a dead load. And a dead load is the unavoidable weight of the structure itself. It's the weight that permanently sets on the structure. It's a dead load. Now, there are things that permanently set on the construction of the house that is you. And they're called dead loads. Your construction was there and established with that in place to permanently bear the weight of your construction. Isn't that something? Can't you see that? Can't you see the parallel? Can't you see it? Now, the paradox is that all of these loads have to be established before the construction of it. This is the whole objection of talking to the engineers, those that are scientists, those that are scientific in thought, those who are given to precision. And it's the same way, those leaders who lead by example, those leaders who are both moral and ethical, those leaders who are virtuous and have valor, those who are learned, who have spent time examining the text, who don't just get up and start talking off the top of their hat and giving you canned messages, something that they heard at a convention, something they heard someone else say, but they've sat and labored to give you something viable, something that will reinforce you to help strengthen those pillars that are stress bearing so that your construction, the house that is you, does not collapse. Hallelujah. That's some good stuff. Amen. And so we want to make sure that we're understanding and we're getting there so that we can help you do better. Because if you do better, you're going to feel better. And if you feel better, you're going to love that feeling so much, you're going to stay in that place. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good becomes better and your better becomes best. Now, there's another aspect of the load, and I'm only going to do this because I'm going to talk to this again when we have more time. So there's another element that I want you to kind of ponder for the rest of this week. Now, remember, the dead load is the permanent weight that has already been established, that your structure, it's built into your structure, your intestinal fortitude, that 13th commandment, that thing that you will not go beyond. You know, those golden rules, that spiritual nugget that's there, that resonates with you when truth is told. I told a young man today, a pimp is a pimp. It doesn't matter if he's wearing a clergy collar or if he's wearing a shirt with no collar. Doesn't matter. A pimp is a pimp. And you know what a pimp is. God doesn't have pimps, not in the kingdom. But you've got to, again, turn everything on you so that you'll be able to see, like Paul told the Roman church that they would be able to see. And that was only possible by them pulling themselves to the side, like huddling. He said, I beseech you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable. That's the least that you can do. Be not conformed to this world. Be transformed. Oh, I know it's hard. With all that is going on, with all of what's available, all the vices that are available out there, I know it's difficult. I'm not telling you anything that's easy. If it was easy, then it would not be of any benefit to you. The fact that it's difficult is what's resisting you, but your ability to resist it is what's developing your strength. Little resistance, little strength. Great resistance, great strength. So don't start crying and sighing. Suck it up and do what you've been doing. But this time, let's transition into a different lane. We're not just surviving now. We're done with just surviving. We know how to do that. We mastered that. What we want to master now is living. But let me tell you this concept so that we can end for this evening. It's called a wind load. And in a wind load, this is especially difficult because it has a certain amount, a certain degree of accuracy, because wind hits it in different places at different times. So it's hard to determine. So they have to consider what that wind load would be, what velocity that wind will hit that building. And when the wind hits the building, it hits it from the base and moves up. And then there's corresponding winds that are moving on a horizontal plane that's constantly hitting it all the way up. So you have one motion hitting at the base and up. You have another motion of wind velocity hitting the building. So you can see that the building has to be constructed with the kind of material that will withstand. What are the important elements? The size of the building. That is the height. That is the width of the building. The larger the structure, the more has to go into maintaining its integrity. And that's determined by how much steel will be put in the building and what kind of support brackets that will also be a part of its construct to help it withstand the velocity of the wind. Doesn't that sound familiar? When the winds of adversity hit your life, they hit your life at the base and it goes up your building. And there are corresponding winds. That's why it feels as though someone is pushing you. And you get so tired of trying to resist it because in many instances, the right material was substituted for the wrong material. So you have to now reinforce. It's okay if you don't have the right material, because we can refortify you with truth. You can be refortified and reinforced with integrity. You will be able to withstand the opposition that's coming against you. You know, judgments. You might even have legal issues. The appetite to conform, jealousies, all those things we were talking about, those are the wrong type of material to be used to construct you. That's corrosion that's eating away at the integrity of the material. That's like termites destroying the wood. You can't blame the termite. That's his job. That's what God designed it to do. To eat up all fallen trees. And if the material that you're using is wood, don't get mad at the termite. Reinforce your building. Substitute out some of the wood and put steel. Put some form of stainless steel, some form of metal in to reinforce it. You can change. You can be anything you desire to be. You've just got to sit down and imagine it. You got to establish intent. You got to sit down and do a cost analysis. And once you are finished with those things, look out, world. Something beautiful, something majestic, and more than all, something powerful has just been unleashed on the world. Change your atmosphere and watch your attitude change. When it changes, watch the altitude you will reach and the places that you will go. I just want to say to my family, it is my prayer that God bless you. To my friends that are looking in, wondering whether or not you want to become a part, come on and become a part of the family. There's no place like this place around this place. So this must be the place. Global dimensions. We're taking it to another level. You just watch. Sit back, enjoy the ride. Until next time, God bless you. God keep you in the center of his will.